The mockery begins. The grand hall of the royal palace was filled with the sound of laughter, echoing off the walls and bouncing around the massive space. The princesses, each dressed in their finest gowns, gathered around the newest recruit to the royal army, the rookie. His name was unknown to most, and his appearance wasn't much to look at. He was just a soldier, standing among the grandeur of royalty. The princesses were used to seeing strength in nobility, but they saw nothing remarkable about him. At the front of the room, the princess queen stood tall, her eyes scanning the rookie. She was known for her sharp tongue and even sharper mind. With a smile full of arrogance, she stepped forward and addressed him directly. "How many battles have you fought?" she asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. The room fell silent for a moment as all eyes turned to the rookie. The rookie didn't flinch. He stood still, his face calm, his hands at his sides. And he didn't react to her mocking tone or the laughter that followed. The princesses all exchanged glances, some of them snickering under their breath. They expected him to feel embarrassed, to shrink back in the face of their royal presence. But he did none of that. He stood there, unmoving, as if their words didn't matter at all. The princess queen couldn't hide her amusement. "Are you too afraid to speak? Or do you not have an answer?" she asked again, stepping even closer to him. She towered over him, her regal presence demanding attention. The other princesses chuckled, enjoying the scene as the rookie remained silent. Still, the rookie didn't answer. He simply looked ahead, his gaze steady, his expression unwavering. There was something about his calmness that made the princesses uneasy. The queen expected him to stammer, to explain that he was a rookie, that he had only just started his journey. But instead, the silence hung in the air, thick with tension. Finally, the youngest princess, who had been watching quietly from her throne, spoke up. "Perhaps he's simply waiting for the right moment to respond," she said softly, her eyes fixed on the rookie. "Don't you think?" Her voice was calm, but there was something in her tone that made the others pause. She wasn't laughing. She wasn't mocking him. Instead, she seemed curious, almost intrigued by the rookie's silence. The princess queen shot her a sharp look but said nothing. She wasn't used to being challenged, even indirectly. She turned back to the rookie, her voice sharp. "You think you can stand here and say nothing? Do you believe you're too good for us? That your silence is some kind of power?" Still, the rookie didn't answer. His expression was unreadable, his eyes calm as ever. The queen's frustration grew, and the laughter of the other princesses began to fade, replaced by an uncomfortable silence. It wasn't fear they saw in his eyes. It was something else. And something they couldn't quite place. His stillness, his composure, was starting to unnerve them. The queen, growing tired of the silence, took another step closer. "Answer me. How many battles have you fought, rookie?" she demanded. "Or are you too afraid to speak?" She laughed, though it was a hollow laugh now, one that didn't reach her eyes. This time the rookie's lips parted slightly, and his voice came out in a low, steady tone. "Yeah, I've fought enough to know that it's not about the number of battles," he said, his voice calm and clear. "It's about how you fight them." The room went quiet. For the first time, the princesses stopped laughing. The queen, taken aback by his response, narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, though her voice lacked the confidence it had held moments ago. "Are you trying to impress us with your cryptic words?" The rookie didn't respond to her challenge. Instead, he simply turned away as though he had already said everything that needed to be said. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply stating a truth that none of the princesses understood yet. The silence that followed was thick with tension. The princesses, once so sure of their superiority, were now questioning themselves. Who was this rookie? What was he hiding? Why didn't he react the way they expected him to? And why did his calmness make them feel so uneasy? The youngest princess watched him with growing curiosity. She had heard stories of his arrival, of how he had come from a far-off land, trained in battle and survival. But she had never imagined that someone like him could exist in the royal palace. He didn't belong to their world of power and prestige. He didn't belong to their royal bloodlines. And yet, there was something about him, something different, that made him stand out among them all. The princess queen, her pride wounded, couldn't let it go. She was the ruler of the palace, the queen, and she would not let a rookie, a mere soldier, undermine her authority. "You think your silence is powerful? You think you're better than us?" she asked, her voice rising again. "If you truly believe that, prove it. Show us what you're made of." The rookie turned his head slightly, his eyes locking with hers. For the first time, there was a flicker of something in his gaze. Not anger, not fear, but something else, something that made the queen hesitate. It was the calmness of someone who had seen things she couldn't even imagine, someone who had faced challenges far beyond the royal palace and survived them. "I don't need to prove anything to you," the rookie said, his voice steady. "But if you want to see what I'm made of, you'll see it soon enough." The room fell silent once again. The princesses, once so sure of their own power, now felt a growing sense of uncertainty. The rookie hadn't flinched. He hadn't backed down. He had stood there, unshaken by their mockery, and spoken his truth. And now they were all left wondering, what would happen next? The room was heavy with silence as the rookie's words hung in the air, resonating with more weight than anyone had expected. The princesses, who had once laughed and mocked him, now found themselves watching him closely, uncertain of what to make of him. The princess queen, still standing at the center of the room, had tried to regain her composure, but it was clear that her confidence had been shaken. She had believed she could break him with just a few harsh words, but the rookie hadn't flinched. Instead, he had remained calm, almost unnervingly so. "You think you can talk to me like that?" The princess queen's voice broke through the stillness, her anger flaring once again. "You think you can stand here and ignore me? You're nothing but a rookie, and a soldier with no real place in this palace." Her words were sharp, filled with venom, but there was something different in the way she said them now. The challenge in her voice was not one of mockery, but of real frustration. She was no longer mocking the rookie. She was desperate to make him prove himself, desperate to force him to show any sign of weakness. The rookie, however, showed no sign of being provoked. His eyes, steady and unyielding, met hers. "I don't need to prove myself to you," he said again, his voice calm but firm. "But if it's a fight you want, I will show you the truth." With those words, the room seemed to hold its breath. For the first time, the princesses realized that the rookie wasn't afraid of them. He wasn't intimidated by their titles or their power. He wasn't fighting for their approval. He was fighting for something else, a truth they couldn't yet understand. The princess queen's eyes narrowed as she stepped forward, drawing her own sword. The room tensed, and the other princesses watched in silence, unsure of what to do next. The queen was known for her skill in combat, her blade a symbol of her royal strength. It was said that she could defeat any challenger in single combat, and now she was about to test the rookie's resolve. She raised her sword, pointing it directly at him. "If you truly think you can stand against me, prove it, but show me what you've got." Her words were sharp, her gaze filled with disdain, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes, something she couldn't hide. The rookie's calm had unsettled her, and she couldn't afford to let it go on any longer. The rookie didn't reach for his own weapon. Instead, he simply stood there, unmoving, watching the princess queen closely. He didn't need to fight her in the way she expected. His quiet confidence was his weapon. His calmness was his shield. The Princess Queen lunged at him with the speed of a striking serpent, her blade aimed at his chest. The rookie, however, didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't even seem to notice the blade coming toward him. At the last moment, just as the sword was about to strike, he shifted to the side with a movement so smooth and fluid that it was almost like watching water flow around an obstacle. The Princess Queen's attack missed by mere inches, and she stumbled forward, but thrown off balance by her own momentum. For a moment she was vulnerable, her sword now too far from her body to defend herself. The rookie, seizing the opportunity, moved swiftly, stepping behind her with a fluid motion. He reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, not to harm her, but to steady her. His grip was firm, unyielding, but not violent. The Princess Queen froze, her heart racing. She had never been in a position where someone had been able to dodge her strike, or let alone get close enough to touch her without getting hit. She had been trained to be the best, to outthink and outfight any opponent, but the rookie had just proven that there was more to combat than just speed and strength. "You're not the only one who has fought battles," the rookie said quietly, his voice calm but filled with an undeniable authority. "It's not about winning the fight with force. It's about knowing when to strike and when to hold back." The Princess Queen turned slowly, and her face flushed with a mix of anger and disbelief. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. Her pride, her belief in her own superiority, had been shattered in an instant. The rookie stepped back, his eyes never leaving the Princess Queen. His calm demeanor remained unchanged, even as she stood there, clearly stunned by what had just transpired. She had thought that by challenging him, she would prove her superiority, but instead she had revealed her own vulnerabilities. And now, for the first time, she was faced with the reality that she was not untouchable. The room was silent, the tension hanging thick in the air. The other princesses, once laughing and mocking the rookie, now watched him with a mixture of awe and fear. They had seen the queen, one of the most skilled fighters in the kingdom, be bested in a matter of moments, and they realized that the rookie was no ordinary soldier. He wasn't someone they could dismiss or look down upon, and he was someone to be reckoned with. But the Princess Queen, still stung by the defeat, wasn't ready to accept it. She had been humiliated in front of her sisters, in front of everyone, and her pride wouldn't let her back down so easily. She clenched her fists and glared at the rookie. "You may have dodged my blade, but that doesn't mean you've won," she said, her voice shaking with frustration. The rookie raised an eyebrow, the hint of a smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Winning isn't always about defeating your opponent," he said calmly. "Sometimes it's about showing them the truth." The Princess Queen, furious but also confused, didn't know how to respond. She had been so sure of herself, so confident in her abilities. But the rookie had exposed her weakness, not in a way that was obvious, but in a way that left her questioning everything she had known about herself. "You can mock me all you want," she said, her voice quieter now. "But you'll never be one of us. You'll always be just a rookie, a human who doesn't belong here." The rookie's gaze softened, but there was no anger in his eyes. "I don't need to be one of you," he said quietly. "I just need to be true to who I am." For the first time, the Princess Queen saw the depth in his words. He wasn't trying to win her approval. He wasn't trying to prove that he was better than her. He was simply showing her that strength came not from titles or bloodlines, but from within. The silence in the room deepened. The Princess Queen, once full of arrogance and pride, now felt something shift within her. The rookie had shown her something that no one ever had, that true power didn't come from force, but from control and understanding. The fight wasn't over yet, but the rookie had already won more than he had set out to. He had won their respect, and in doing so, he had shown them that the empire was no longer the place it once was. It was changing, not just as he had, The audience, both the princesses and the soldiers who had been watching from the sidelines, stood in stunned silence. What had started as a simple mockery of a rookie had turned into something much bigger, something they hadn't expected. The rookie's quiet strength had proven to be more powerful than anything they had ever imagined. After the encounter in the Grand Hall, where the rookie had bested the Princess Queen with nothing but his calm and calculated movements, a strange silence lingered in the air. The princesses, still unsure of how to react, had retreated to their private chambers. The echoes of the rookie's words and the way he had handled the Queen's challenge followed them like a shadow. The eldest princess paced back and forth in her room, her mind racing with thoughts she had never had to confront before. She had spent her entire life under the belief that her royal blood gave her power. But now, she found herself questioning everything. And the rookie was no ordinary soldier. The way he stood there, unshaken by mockery or challenge, was not just a sign of physical strength, but mental fortitude. He hadn't fought the Queen with brute force, but with skill, wisdom, and control. He had shown them something they could never have imagined, a new kind of strength, one that didn't rely on bloodlines or tradition, but on inner resolve and quiet power. The eldest princess knew that something had changed. The question now was, what would happen next? Meanwhile, the rookie stood in the palace courtyard, gazing at the horizon. His thoughts were clear, focused. He had proven himself in front of the royal family, but this battle was far from over. The Queen's mockery had been only a small part of the challenge he faced. The real battle would be against the expectations of the princesses themselves, their rigid traditions, their deep-rooted pride. He wasn't here to prove his worth to them, and he was here to show them that the empire needed a new kind of leadership. The youngest princess, who had been observing him from a distance, approached quietly. Her footsteps echoed softly in the empty courtyard, and for a moment, she wondered whether she had made the right choice by bringing the rookie into their world. "You've changed the way they see you," she said softly, standing next to him. "But I'm not sure if that's enough. What will you do now?" The rookie turned to face her, and his expression steady but thoughtful. "I will continue to show them the way forward," he said quietly. "But change doesn't happen overnight. It will take time. And if they are unwilling to follow, I will go on alone. But I believe in what I've said. The empire can be stronger, more united. It just needs to accept that strength comes from within, not from titles or bloodlines." She nodded slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. "Do you think they will accept this new way?" she asked, and her voice filled with doubt. He smiled, a small but sincere smile, the kind of smile that spoke of quiet confidence. "They have no choice but to." Despite the rookie's calm demeanor, not everyone in the royal palace was ready to accept the changes he had suggested. The Queen, still seething from the earlier confrontation, had retreated to her chambers, plotting in silence. Her mind worked furiously, trying to find a way to reassert her authority, to regain the position she had held for so long. Her pride had been wounded, and she wasn't about to let some rookie, some outsider, take what was rightfully hers. The princesses who had once supported her now found themselves torn. They had seen the rookie's strength, his calm, and the way he handled the situation with such precision. They were beginning to question the old ways, wondering if perhaps they had been living in a gilded cage of their own making. But even as they questioned, a deep-seated loyalty to their royal heritage held them back. Could they really follow a mere human, no matter how strong he appeared? Could they leave behind everything they had known and trusted for so long? The Queen, seeing the division growing among her sisters, knew that she had to act. She called for a meeting in the royal council chamber, her voice sharp and commanding. "We cannot let this continue," she declared, her eyes cold with determination. "This human, this rookie, Ak has already done enough damage. If we let him stay, if we let him influence us, we risk losing everything." But even as she spoke, she noticed the uneasy glances exchanged between the other princesses. Some of them, especially the younger ones, seemed less convinced by her words. They had seen the rookie's actions for themselves. They had felt his strength. And they were beginning to wonder if the queen's obsession with maintaining power had blinded her to the truth. Meanwhile, the rookie, unaware of the brewing conflict in the palace, continued his quiet work. He spent his days training, learning, and thinking about the future. He knew that the real battle was not one of swords, but of ideas. The empire had become too reliant on old traditions, on the idea that birthright was the ultimate measure of power. He wanted to change that. He wanted to show them that the strength of an empire came from its people, from those who were willing to fight for it, and not from those who were simply born into it. In the days that followed, the divide between the princesses grew more pronounced. The rookie's quiet revolution continued to spread, not through loud speeches or acts of defiance, but through his actions. He worked alongside the soldiers, trained with the guards, and showed them all the importance of unity and strength. He didn't force anyone to follow him. Instead, he led by example, and teaching them that true leadership wasn't about wielding power. It was about earning respect. But the queen, stubborn and proud, refused to let the rookie's influence grow. She saw him as a threat to her rule, to the stability she had always known. Her words became sharper, her actions more forceful. She began to rally those who still held on to the old traditions, the old ways of thinking. She promised them that if they helped her take back control, the empire would remain as it had always been, a kingdom ruled by blood and power. The princesses who had once been loyal to her found themselves torn. They had seen the rookie's strength, and for some, it was beginning to feel like a betrayal to continue following the queen's rigid authority. The youngest princess, in particular, felt the weight of this internal conflict. She had chosen the rookie, and now she saw the consequences of that choice playing out before her eyes. The royal family was divided, and the empire's future hung in the balance. In the palace, there was a growing sense of unrest. The palace was no longer just a place of royal ceremonies and lavish feasts. It had become a battlefield of ideologies, with the queen fighting to preserve the old ways, and the rookie quietly yet steadily challenging everything the empire had been built upon. But despite the queen's best efforts, she couldn't silence the growing voices of those who supported the rookie. They were tired of living in fear of tradition, of being ruled by bloodlines and power that had little to do with the reality of the world around them. They wanted something more. They wanted a future where strength and wisdom, not birthright, determined their fate. The inevitable confrontation came sooner than expected. One evening, as the rookie walked through the palace halls, and he was met by a group of royal guards who had once been loyal to the queen. They had been waiting for him, but not with the intention of attacking him. Instead, they had come to speak with him, to express their own doubts about the future of the empire. "We've seen what you've done," one of the guards said quietly, his voice filled with respect. "We've seen the changes you're bringing. But we need to know. Are you truly ready to lead us? Or are we simply following another fool who thinks he can change the world?" The rookie stopped, his gaze steady and thoughtful. "I'm not here to lead for the sake of power," he replied. "I'm here to show you that we can build a better future together, one where strength comes from unity, not from titles or bloodlines." The guards, who had once served the queen without question, exchanged glances. For the first time, they saw something in the rookie they hadn't expected, a genuine desire to make the empire better, not for his own gain, but for everyone. As the rookie spoke to them, a feeling of hope began to rise within the guards. The change they had once feared was no longer something to fight against. It was something they could stand behind. The rookie had earned their trust, not through words, but through actions. He was showing them that true leadership came not from command, but from the willingness to work together. The moment had come. The divide within the royal family was now evident to all, and the choice was clear. Would the empire remain trapped in the past, clinging to the old ways? Or would it embrace a new path, one where strength, wisdom, and unity would shape its future? The tension in the royal palace was palpable. The final confrontation was drawing near. The rookie had proven his strength, his wisdom, and his worth. But the real test was whether he could unite the empire and lead it into a new era. The princesses were divided, and the nobility was becoming increasingly restless. Some of them had started to see the truth in the rookie's vision, but others were still holding on to the old ways, unwilling to let go of the traditions that had governed their lives for centuries. The eldest princess, who had once mocked the rookie and challenged his every move, was now standing at a crossroads. She had seen the rookie's power, his strength, his leadership, and his ability to inspire those around him. But she had also seen her own royal bloodline, her heritage, her legacy, slipping through her fingers. The empire had always belonged to the royal family, and now it was clear that the rookie was threatening that very foundation. She couldn't help but feel torn. Was she willing to accept the change he brought? Or was she determined to fight to preserve the old ways, even if it meant tearing apart the very empire they had worked so hard to build? The queen, once so certain in her power, found herself questioning everything. She had tried to hold on to the empire by force, but now she saw the rookie's quiet strength and realized that it was not in power or control that the empire could thrive. It was in unity and wisdom. She had been wrong to underestimate him, wrong to believe that strength could only come from birthright and tradition. And the empire was changing, and she realized with a sinking feeling that she could either be part of that change or be left behind. The rookie stood in the royal council chamber, his back straight, his eyes focused on the princesses who had gathered before him. The room was silent as everyone waited for him to speak, knowing that the fate of the empire rested on his words. He had already proven himself in battle and in wisdom, but this was the moment that would define his legacy. "I am not here to take your thrones," he began, his voice steady but filled with conviction. "I am not here to claim the empire for myself. I am here to lead it forward, to help us all build a future where strength is measured by our ability to work together, not by our titles or bloodlines." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the princesses, the nobles, and the guards. "This empire has been built on pride, on tradition, on the belief that power belongs to a few. Yeah, but I believe it belongs to everyone, to every soldier, every citizen, and yes, even to those who thought they had lost their place. Together we can build something stronger, something greater." The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. The eldest princess, her face tight with indecision, finally spoke. "And if we refuse?" she asked, her voice soft but challenging. The rookie looked at her, his gaze unflinching. "If you refuse, the empire will remain divided. It will remain stuck in the past, unable to adapt to the world around it. But I won't fight against my own people. I will lead them, with or without you." The princesses exchanged glances. There was no more mocking, no more laughter. What the rookie had shown them, his strength, his quiet authority, his unwavering commitment to a better future, was undeniable. They had spent their lives thinking they were the ones who held the empire together. But now, they realized that the true strength of the empire came from within its people. It came from the willingness to change, to adapt, and to embrace the future, even when it meant letting go of the past. The youngest princess, who had been the first to see the rookie's potential, stepped forward. "We must change," she said, her voice filled with certainty. "We can no longer live in the shadow of our ancestors. The empire belongs to the people, not just to the royal family." The eldest princess, and her face a mixture of pride and regret, nodded slowly. "I see now that I was wrong," she said. "I thought strength was about power, but it's about leadership. And you, Rookie, have shown us what true leadership looks like." The queen, her expression hardening with resolve, turned to face the Rookie. "I've seen what you're capable of. I won't stand in your way. But understand this, there is no going back now. The empire will be forever changed." The Rookie smiled, his heart lightening. "Ha, that's the point," he said quietly. "It's time for a new era." The decision was made. The royal family, once divided and clinging to the past, had come together under a new vision. The Rookie's leadership had shown them a way forward, a way that embraced change, unity, and strength through wisdom. The princesses, humbled by the Rookie's quiet strength, pledged their support to him, and together they began the long journey of rebuilding the empire. The nobility, once resistant to change, and slowly began to see the benefits of the Rookie's vision. The old ways of rule, based on bloodlines and power, were slowly replaced by a more egalitarian system, one that valued strength, wisdom, and the will to serve the people. The empire began to flourish in ways it never had before. The walls of tradition, once so firm, began to crumble, and a new empire rose from the ashes of the old. The Rookie, now fully integrated into the royal family, never sought the throne for himself. He did not care for power. What he cared about was the people, their strength, their unity, and their future. The empire was no longer just a kingdom of royal bloodlines. It was a kingdom of the people, for the people. And that was the change that would sustain it for generations to come. The princesses, standing side by side with the Rookie, realized that true power wasn't about ruling over others. It was about guiding them, protecting them, and showing them that there was more to life than tradition and titles. The empire was stronger than ever, not because of a king or queen on a throne, but because of the unity of its people. As the sun set over the royal palace, the Rookie stood beside the youngest princess, watching the horizon. They had come a long way from the mockery of the grand hall. Now they were ready to face whatever the future had in store. Together, the empire was reborn. Years passed, and the empire continued to grow. The Rookie, once mocked and underestimated, had become a symbol of change and strength. His leadership was no longer questioned, it was respected. The princesses, having learned from him, led alongside him, each one contributing their unique skills to the betterment of the empire. They were no longer just rulers. They were true leaders, working for the people, building a future where strength and wisdom were valued above all else. The walls of the palace, once symbols of royal pride and power, had been rebuilt to reflect the new era. The people from every corner of the empire now had a voice in the decisions that shaped their future. The old ways had been left behind, replaced by a system where leadership was earned, not inherited. The Rookie, now older and wiser, looked back on the journey with pride. He had not only changed the royal family, he had changed the entire empire. The princesses, once divided by pride and tradition, it had come together to lead with compassion, strength, and unity. The people had embraced the new order, and the empire was thriving like never before. As he stood at the top of the palace stairs, looking out over the city, the Rookie knew that his work was not yet done. The empire was strong, but it would always require vigilance, care, and leadership. And with the princesses by his side, he was ready to guide them into whatever the future held. Together, they would protect the empire and ensure that it would never again be divided by old traditions. The empire had changed, and so had they. From mockery and uncertainty, they had created a new legacy, one built on strength, unity, and the belief that anyone, no matter their past, could lead if they had the courage to fight for a better future. And so, the empire lived on, stronger than ever, a shining example of what could be accomplished when people came together, united by purpose, led by wisdom and driven by the desire for a better tomorrow.